What are the worst and best positions going into training camp this coming 2025 season for the Miami Dolphins? I'm going to let you guys know right now. We're going to go over it all. But before we do that, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and we will get into it. So before we get into it, I just want to preface this that I think a lot of people are really, trying to be down on the team. I want to do this type of video so that I can show you guys we are all right. I don't think that we are in dire straits like everybody's making us out to believe. I think there's a couple of positions that we're going to talk about, and when you see the depth chart and you kind of really take in everything that we have, I mean, it's not bad. Like, we really have a pretty decent team, and I think a lot of people are trying to go based upon injuries. Like, if all of a sudden our team gets riddled with injuries, and yeah, if our team gets riddled with injuries, sure, it's going to be a rough year. It just happens for every team. If you get injured, you don't have the team that you wanted to put out there, so you're going to be a worse team. But when you look at the depth chart just going in right now, I personally don't think we're going to sign too many free agents. I mean, I'll make a video about like who we could sign, but I don't think they're going to sign too many free agents. I think the philosophy is developing young talent and allowing them to flourish through coaching. So we'll get into it right now. So we're going to go over, obviously, each one of the positions and do we have depth? What's the worst? What's the best? We'll get into it right now. So obviously at quarterback, you have Tua Tagovailoa. And behind him is Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers. I'm thinking right now, Quinn Ewers is going to jump him, if not next year, the middle of this year, most likely. I just think right now, when it comes to the quarterback position, the backup quarterback position, and I want to preface something after all of this, is that Zach Wilson is just not performing well right now. The mental side of the game is where Zach Wilson kind of struggles, and he tends to rely too much on his talent, and sometimes that's the case, but at the quarterback position, you can't do that. You have to be able to read defenses. You have to understand where you need to go to the ball with the ball, because it doesn't matter what the physical talents are. Defenses will figure you out, and it looks like that's what has happened with Zach Wilson in his career. Is that BYU, he was very talented, arm strength, running around, all of that, and those college defenses are a little different than the NFL. And once he hit the NFL, it's like, you can't just rely on, throwing the ball as fast as you can and running away from people, because most people chasing you are faster than you. And the arm talent, people are going to figure out where you're going with the ball, so they're just going to pick it off. And that's what's sort of happening. Now, there's plenty of time, training camp. This is a complicated offense, so don't expect them to pick it up immediately. But it's just one of those things that sometimes you got to realize that Zach Wilson has relied on his talent for a really long time. Next position we're going to be talking about is running back, and this one is going to be a funny one, because obviously you see in the depth chart Jaylen Wright is number 2, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Devon Achane is going to be much more in that wide receiver role than he's going to be just straight as a running back that we've had. We're going to do a good mix, and you're going to have Jaylen Wright probably taking the first and second downs, with Devon Achane being thrown in there every once in a while for, sweeps and things to get him on the outside to use his speed. But power running wise, it's definitely going to be Jaylen Wright taking the brunt of the carries. And this is an interesting thing going into training camp to see what goes on here, because both of these backs are very similar. Ollie Gordon is kind of very similar to Alexander Mattison, but the upside for Ollie Gordon is obviously way higher than Madison. But people sleep on Madison. He's a very good running back. He was good for the Raiders. He's kind of the only one that was doing anything last year, because they're the guy that they drafted, which I had in fantasy football. He just sucked. He was terrible. He just does not get yards. He probably rushed for 20 yards a game. And Madison came up and started actually running for, at least 60, 70. So he's not a bad running back. But Ollie Gordon, I think the upside is way higher. And I think the reality of the situation is that we'll see what happens in training camp. The experience might keep him here, but the talent of Ollie Gordon, I just think it's going to be tough to keep him as a fourth-string running back. I think you got to get him carries in this, coming season, you gotta see what he can do, because I think in training camp he's really gonna shine. People forget that he was a Heisman Trophy runner-up just 2 years ago. He was 1,700 yards and like 18 touchdowns, and the offensive line sucked. His Oklahoma State offensive line was atrocious, and the reason you can understand that is because, yes, he had like half the yardage that he had the year before, but he still had double digits of touchdowns. So when you see something like that, you understand that his running style is great and he knows how to get through. It's just, if you don't have good blockers, you're not going to be able to get yardage. And especially if you're a back like this, he's not slow, but he's not fast. So you're not going to be able to break away from defenders. He's not a shifty dude. He's a guy that runs into people. And if you have a bad offensive line, you're just going to have to run into 3-4 dudes. And I think that's what happened last year. But when it comes to the running back position, I think this is, if I could be real with you guys, I think this one of the strongest on this team is this running back group, because not only are they all super talented in their own way. You have Jaylen Wright, who's pretty much the pure runner, speed, big, shifty, all of that. You have Devon Achane, who is that scat back wide receiver combination that can go all over the field, can catch the ball, and is super fast. You have Madison, who's the big bruising guy. And then you have Ollie Gordon, who's the biggest dude on this team. But the key to him is that he also can catch the ball, and he doesn't run bad routes. Like, he's actually pretty decent. They used him last year at college. They used him like that. So this running back room just has so much freaking talent, way more. Raheem Mostert, he was good, for a year, but it was mostly the offensive line and the blocking, and it was great. But this running back group, I think, is so vastly more talented and probably going to be better than what we've seen with Mike McDaniel for a while. So really excited about that. And then we'll get to the wide receivers. And the wide receivers right now, obviously Tyreek, Waddle, and Westbrook Akine. So here's the thing. Waddle's going to be number one this year. I could put money on it. Just the way that it's looking, even just looking at him in the press conferences, he looks like at least 20 pounds bigger. He looks much bigger. He looks like he's ready to try and take on the brunt of the tackles throughout the season. Tyreek Hill, I haven't really heard much from him for a little bit. I think it's just one of those things that right now he's going to be quiet. And what I truly do see happening is that, this year Jaylen Waddle's going to take the brunt of the targets, and Tyreek Hill's going to be a baby about it, because that's what he does. If he doesn't, I will think he's changed a new leaf, and I will root for him again. But just the way that he is, I know that once Jaylen Waddle gets like 10 targets in a game and he gets 5, he's going to throw a temper tantrum, and he's going to want to get traded. But we'll see. If we start winning and we start like clearly winning, and Jaylen Waddle's taking the brunt of the targets, we'll see what he does. That's just like the only key that I have here. And on top of that, I think Devon Achane is going to take more of the role of Tyreek Hill. So I don't see Tyreek Hill really, being the guy that's going to get like 20 targets a game. And the problem is that throughout the offseason, he has said, again, with the 2,000 yards and all that crap, I don't know if he's just saying that, but, I do truly believe that Jaylen Waddle is going to be number one, and Devon Achane is going to get some of the targets that Tyreek Hill would have gotten before. We're not going to funnel the ball to Tyreek, and it's going to be much more based upon who's open. So, but that being said, with this right now, I think this is a very stacked room. You have the big 6'2" guy that can get after it, can be in the goal zone area, trying to essentially be the red zone target. You got Jaylen Waddle, who I think really is somebody that I think people underlyingly don't realize that Tua does look to Jaylen Waddle in the red zone more than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has dropped a lot of passes. Typically the game-winning passes in the end zone a lot of the time they go to Jaylen Waddle, so he's another red zone target, having Tyreek Hill. And then you're going to have the second year from Malik Washington, which I think is going to be really exciting to see what he does, because he can definitely be a very, very reliable slot guy. And I think that's what we're going to try and position him for, so that when Tyreek Hill is gone, you have Jaylen Waddle, Malik Washington. And to be honest, probably this next coming year, drafting either a corner or a wide receiver in the first or second round, and seeing if you can pair Jaylen Waddle with some young dude that will help him, get open. And that's what I see. And we'll see what happens. I think this is one of the deepest positions going into training camp. Izukanma is still there. We'll see what he wants to do or how he plays. Taj Washington was someone that had a lot of promise coming into the offseason last year, but then I think he tore his ACL. So this is another guy that when it was coming in, Malik Washington and Taj Washington both looked really good coming into last year. You still have Tyreek Black. And then you got the undrafted guys, Theo Weiss, who I'm hearing good things about him, and Andrew Armstrong, who is just that 6'5" guy that's just got a lot of potential. We'll see if one of these guys, can make the 53-man roster. But I think this is one of the deepest positions, and I think we have a lot of talent on this wide receiver room. I mean, this is what I'm trying to do this for, is to show people how on paper, obviously we have to see what translates to the field, but on paper, how really kind of stacked that we are, especially on the offensive side. I think we do have a lot of good players. Obviously, don't think Jonnu Smith is going to be here this season, so it's going to be Julian Hill and Pharaoh Brown, which the way that I think we're going, I don't think we're going to be utilizing tight ends very much, and I think they're going to be blocking more of the time. I think most of the targets will probably go to Tanner Conner. I think he's going to be the one pass-catching guy that we have as a tight end on this team. I think Jonnu Smith, the contract and everything, what they're truly looking to go for, it seems, is that Jonnu Smith, players that are in their 30s that are requiring, a lot of money, they're trying to get young quick. That's what we're trying to do. They're trying to completely flip the scenario. Instead of overpaying for older players, they want to, essentially draft and develop talent. That's kind of what we're going for. So I think Jonnu Smith is not going to be on the team coming into this year. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be these guys, and I think Tanner Conner is probably going to take a step up this year. And I think the pass catching tight end that we need, I think he will leapfrog some of these guys and make a shot for being that guy to catch passes as a tight end, because he's very similar to Jonnu. He's fast, shifty, can't really doesn't really block that well. Very similar. So we'll see what happens. If we keep Jonnu, then I think that's a great position. We'll see what happens. Once they move Jalen Ramsey, I think it's going to be, we'll figure out what's happening. But getting to the offensive line, so far I'm hearing a lot of good things. First day, Savanaya was Savanaya, I think that's how you pronounce it. He was, struggling to get together, but it's a rookie. This is what happens when you are a rookie. But right now Patrick Paul, he's looking really good. He's showing his length, 6'7". James Daniels looks like he's recovering very well from the Achilles. Already participating in in individual drills. Aaron Brewer's a stud. We know he's a stud. Savanaya, haven't heard much from him. Good or bad, which is kind of a good thing. You don't really want to hear a lot from offensive linemen, because that just means that they're screwing up. And Austin Jackson is pretty much the leader on this line with Aaron Brewer. So, and he looks fantastic. I'm hearing a lot of good things from Austin Jackson. I think this is going to be his best year. And then when you look at the depth that we have, people don't like Liam Eichenberg, but he's a good backup. He's a good dude to come in, be a backup. The problem is that people forget free agents, although some of them do want money. Typically, people like Isaiah Wynn or, some of those other players, they want a shot to be a starter. And, it's tough because we kind of have a lock at the starters for our offensive line. So if you sign here, you're signing to be a backup. And someone like Isaiah Wynn, before we got Jonah, I was looking to sign him because I thought Isaiah Wynn could be a starter. But the thing is that Isaiah Wynn probably wants to be a starter. He probably does, or wants to have a shot at playing. If he, miraculously gets signed by us, that's great. But a lot of those players want to start. They want to be able to have an opportunity to compete for a position. With us, Jonah's starting. I don't care what you say. James Daniels is starting. Patrick Paul is starting. Aaron Brewer is starting. You're not switching those guys. So you're not going to get a starting role. But when you look at the offensive line, Ryan Hayes has been a staple here for a while. Great backup. Jackson Carman wasn't great last year. But I think he's a sufficient backup. Now, obviously, the way that I'm saying this, I'm not planning on, these guys all going down. I think a lot of people are planning on these guys playing. It's the same like Tua, with this offensive line, it's the same like Tua. If we start losing significant players in the offensive line, the season's not going to be great. We're really relying on these guys pretty much staying healthy, because if they do, we have an offensive line that can compete. Yes, of course, if, 3 of them go down, it's going to be tough for anyone to compete in the NFL. But when you have Jackson Carman, you have Andrew Meyer, who is probably the best backup out of all of these guys. He's the one that you can definitely rely on. Liam Eichenberg, before he got injured, for some snaps, you can definitely rely on Liam Eichenberg to be able to fill a role. He's not going to be great, but you're kind of used to him at this point. Larry Borum, we signed him in the offseason. So, again, competitive backup. And, Ryan Hayes moving up the depth chart like this, obviously it's mostly undrafted free agents. He's that 7th round pick, I think, from 2 or 3 years ago. Can't remember. But, yeah, I mean, he's sufficient enough. So it's a decent backup room. And then you got the undrafted guys. You still got Keon Smith over there, which apparently, Chris Greer likes Keon Smith. Josh Preby, he's decent undrafted free agent, along with Addison West. And then Braden Daniels was, someone that came in the NFL, but, he just didn't really fill out to do anything. But, it's a decently filled room. You have some players in this room, and they'll probably sign some other players. But looking at the starters, I'm pretty happy with who we got starting this year. I think it's going to be a decent offensive line coming into this year. And then people forget we still have Alec Ingold, so we're going to be running a lot more of those powers. And when you watch the run game last season, when Alec Ingold was blocking, we definitely got yardage. For some reason, they went away from it. I don't know if he got injured or something like that, but they went away from it, and then they just started running with just the running back, and, it wasn't great. Then we're going to get to the defense. That 3-4 defense looks... This is what I'm really excited about. It looks good. It looks really good. So we'll get into it right now. The defensive line. This defensive line looks fantastic. So you have left end Kenneth Grant, nose tackle Benito Jones, which I think low-key there's a possibility that Jordan Phillips could leapfrog him and maybe play some snaps at the nose tackle, because Jordan Phillips is looking great in camp right now. And then you got the dude, Zach Sealer. Just picturing this right now, where you have literally big old Benito Jones in the middle, and then you have Kenneth Grant and Zach Sealer taking up the ends. I mean, you're taking up 5 offensive linemen with just those 3. That's what I think is so crazy. With these dudes, Benito Jones is, and it's kind of low-key the smallest, almost the smallest between Zach Sealer and Benito Jones. Those 3 dudes are taking up 5 offensive linemen. Think of this. Are you going to block Kenneth Grant or Zach Sealer with 1 dude and then do 2 against Benito Jones? Dude, I mean, come on, man. This is going to be 5 offensive linemen between these 3 straight off the bat. Backups are great. Jordan Phillips, I think, is definitely going to make a play because he looks fantastic. And then you got Matt Dickerson, and we just signed Ben Still. So we got a very stacked room. Alex Huntley, another rookie, Zeke Biggers, and then Matthew Butler's still there. I think this room is stacked, and I think this front 3 just by itself is scary coming into this league, because they take up 5 as it is, like, you're not going to be able to. With those three guys, you got to double team two of them. Like, or I mean, if you double team one of them's getting through. I mean, it looks sick. And then we'll go even better to the freaking linebackers, bro. And we're going to sit here with Jaylin Phillips, Terrell Dodson, Jordan Brooks, and Bradley Chubb. And then you got Chot Robinson that's going to be filling in there, kind of being switched in and out. And here's the thing, this is stacked. Like, it's going to be unbelievable coming to who do you block really? Because you got these three up forward, and then you got Bradley Chubb and Jaylin Phillips with Chop Robinson coming at you. Who do you block? And then you have Terrell Dodson, who led our team in interceptions last year. I think people are sleeping on him, and Jordan Brooks, who has been the linebacker that we needed for a very long time. He had a stellar year. I don't know how he didn't make the Pro Bowl, but it is what it is. Who do you block? Then you switch in Chop Robinson, and I'm hearing that there might even be packages where you put Kenneth Grant at the nose tackle, and then you put Chop or Chubb or Phillips at the D end, like the soft D end, and you send all three of those guys with Kenneth Grant and Zach Sealer at the quarterback. Like, what, bro? And then on top of that, you have KJ Britt and Willie Gay, who are looking like starting linebackers that are your backups. This room, the linebacker room, is stacked. And then you go into Channing Tindall, Mo Camaro, and Cameron Good, who are all high potential young guys. And then Eugene Asante and Grayson Murphy and Tarek McLennan with the undrafted dudes that are in the back that can possibly make a team. Not only are we stacked, we are building for the future, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of young talent on this team that, we'll see if they make the roster, but we got practice squad players that are going to be continuing to develop their skills. But this is a stacked room. And then Quentin Bell, who's a solid backup. This is a stacked room right here. I mean, this is probably the strongest out of the entire Miami Dolphins. The linebacker room, the front seven, is loaded, bro. And then even the backups, like, we'll circle all around here. Even the backups are loaded, bro. Like, this is probably the most stacked front seven that I've seen the Dolphins put out there since, I don't know, since maybe when we had Ndamukong Suh in those days, something like that. When we had, I think it was like Dansby and Ndamukong Suh, and at that moment in time, even though Ndamukong didn't turn out great, but this is the best front seven I've seen the Dolphins ever have. I am just so excited to see what we do with this. And then we'll go into the back end, and of course people are worried. People are worried about what's happening, but here's the thing. Obviously, they have Cater at the nickel right now. I don't think that's going to be the case. Storm Duck is at the left corner. What I think is going to happen, obviously, don't count on Jalen Ramsey being there. It's going to be Cater at the right corner. Then you're going to have Storm Duck possibly at the left corner. But I want you to preface this. People are sleeping right now on what Cam Smith or Jason Marshall can do. What I'm hearing, obviously it's minicamp, but what I'm hearing right now, we all had a scare in the beginning. Listen, the only thing you heard was Cam Smith getting burnt by Jaylen Waddle. I'm going to tell you right now, Jaylen Waddle burnt everybody in this minicamp. It wasn't just Cam Smith. It's just Cam Smith is the name that you'll hear and go, oh, crap. But Jaylen Waddle burnt everyone. He just kind of took advantage of the entire defense. Jaylen Waddle looks stellar coming into this year. But after that, you haven't heard anything about Cam Smith. The only thing you heard is that he's taking care of himself. He's on the field. It was a quick hamstring scare. But besides that, he's fine. He just literally just had nothing said about him. He just went about his business. And what I'm hearing is a lot of good things. The coaching staff, Mike McDaniel's talking about Cam Smith looking very good, looking sharp, looking like he's ready to learn and do the things that he wants to do. So personally, I think people are worried about this room. But what I think is happening, and, we'll talk about Jason right now. I'm hearing this dude, coming out of college, we heard that he just, like, I mean, when you watched him, he just looked like he wasn't giving effort and all of that stuff. What it looks like right now is that the coaching staff in Florida was garbage, and it just, it got to him. He just wasn't fully there, and he got to the Dolphins right now. And what I'm hearing all over the place is that Jason Marshall is performing extremely well right now. Even just to think, just think of this: Ethan Bonner has been on this team. Isaiah Johnson's playing well. Ethan Robinson is there too. Jason Marshall has already leapfrogged him to be the backup, essentially, going into training camp. So right now, it's pretty much between these three guys who takes that other position. Storm Duck, Cam Smith, Jason Marshall, then Cater Coe, who's going to be at that right. And then whoever, kind of is second in that goes to the nickel. Or, we forget too, Artie Burns is here. Artie Burns, Kendall Sheffield, they're here. Artie Burns is he's a former first-round pick. So we have decent corners coming into this league year. It's just about who kind of shines over who. And I truly think that the starting lineup is going to be Cam Smith, Cater Coe, and either Artie Burns or Jason Marshall, one of the two. But I think Cam Smith is going to start, or Storm Duck. It's like, I don't really think that we're going to sign any corners, unless something crazy happens where none of them are performing well in training camp. I don't think we're signing anybody. I think we're trading Jalen Ramsey. We're probably going to get a draft pick. We're just going to see, between Jason Marshall, Storm Duck, Artie Burns, and Cam Smith, who takes the top three positions. I think that's just the end of the conversation right there. I think they're all performing well. We're going to see who takes the starting role, and I don't really think they're going to sign anybody. I think they're good with who they got. And then we'll go to the safeties. Melifonwu looks really good, picking people off, all of that. He looks fantastic. So I think he's starting at strong safety. And then it's just going to be between Dante Trader, who has been looking very good, already leapfrog Patrick McMorris, or Ashton Davis, which personally I think Ashton Davis is going to start. Unless Dante Trader just shows out in training camp. So I think it's going to definitely be Ifeatu Melifonwu and Ashton Davis as your starting safeties. I'm happy with that. I'm all right with that. As long as they can stay healthy, I'm good with that. And Elijah Campbell and Dante Trader are very good backups. And then you also have Patrick McMorris. Jordan Colbert's just a guy. But those three definitely great backups. So not worried if one of them goes down. And yeah, I mean, I'm all right with it. I'm all right with this team right now. I think maybe you sign a couple players depending on what happens in training camp. But so as you can see, I think obviously if we're gonna go on the best to worst, the best position that we have right now is the front seven. I would say honestly, linebackers. The linebacker position, I think, is the best positional group that we have right now from outside to inside. I think we have the most depth. I think the players that we have are just phenomenal. So when I'm thinking of the best, and close second would be honestly the running back of the wide receiver room, and even the defensive ends. I think just in general the front seven is the best positional group. I think there's so much depth. I think there's so much room to grow. I'm very excited about that group. Obviously the worst is the cornerback, but the reason why it's the worst is because we just don't know. There's a lot of potential on that cornerback room, and it's just not big names, and we expected Jaylen Ramsey to be here, before the end of the season, coming in next season, and he's not. So we're all kind of freaking out, but kind of forget that we have a lot of talent on that cornerback. Cam Smith is one of the best corners coming out of the draft. Artie Burns used to be a first-round pick. Jason Marshall Jr. was a 5-star recruit that, has all the intangibles, but just needs to put it all together. Cater Coe, who played phenomenal his rookie year, and then even last year kind of started, putting pieces together. It wasn't fantastic, but definitely was putting the pieces together. I think we have a lot of talent, and even Storm Duck played pretty decent over stretches last year. It's just about putting it together, finding the right guys to take the right starting role, and that's it. So that's why I think it's the worst, obviously, because we just don't know. We don't know who's going to start, what's happening. We're assuming that, people are just assuming that Cam Smith is going to suck, that Artie Burns is going to suck, that, Storm Duck is going to suck. Like, we're assuming that these things are going to happen, and you don't know. Like, I'm hearing a lot of good things about Jason Marshall and Cam Smith. I think with some of the media, unfortunately, we're taking a lot of face value for things, and me personally, I think it's a lot of people that never played football in their life, were never good at football, trying to analyze football and tell you what it is. It's like it's like a video game nerd. It's like someone playing Madden telling you how to play real football. It's kind of the way that it's going right now. Some of the people that are in the news, they tend to want to think that they know everything, and they don't. And I truly do believe that coming into the season, there's a lot of potential in that room, in the cornerback room, and just got to put it all together. We'll see what happens. And if they don't, there's plenty of free agents that we can sign. But I don't think we're going to. I think we're rolling with who we got, and I think we're trying to develop them into starting corners. You don't need to be great, because our front seven is great. You don't need to be. You just need to stay with them for at least 2 to 3 seconds so one of our guys can get to the quarterback. That's it. So I think that's what's going to happen. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Tell me if you think our team sucks, if we're going to win 2 games this year. Let me get that Tua comment where he just says he can't beat good teams, even though, he was beating the Bills and, the defense let down. Let me know. Let me know. I love hearing these comments. And Sam and Philip and all the guys that keep commenting on all the videos, appreciate you guys very much. Soon we're going to be doing memberships that I'll have an extra video every week. So if you guys wanted to sign up for that, I think that's going to be available pretty soon. I just want to figure out everything that I'm doing. But as always, guys, fins up, baby. Love you all. Peace.